Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and this is the Tortured Emo Boy Department, Part 2. These boys got trauma, y'all. If you are here for Part 2 for the first time and you have missed Part 1, please do go check that video out. Yes, I am filming this directly after filming Part 1, because I had enough books to talk about. I still probably have even more emo boys that I can discuss. So if you would like a part 3 to this, let me know in the comments. For a recap, what is a tortured emo boy? These are characters who have just been through a lot, okay? These are the guys that we probably shouldn't be rooting for. We possibly should be just sanctioning them and throwing away the key. But ultimately these are characters who, they've gone through a lot of trauma. They've gone through some unspeakable horrors in their life. As a result, they've kind of shut the world off, they've closed off, they've become either like melancholic and sorrowful, or they're just really angry at the world. You know, the bad boys, the ones we're warned to not fall in love with, the ones that we're told are going to break our hearts, the ones that scream, leave me alone, but underneath all of that, they are actually cinnamon rolls, and they're actually just either wanting to live their life as they can, or they just want to protect the people they love. Those are basically my criteria to make a character a tortured emo boy. They've gone through unspeakable things and unspeakable traumas that they're still kind of dealing with because they haven't processed it in a healthy way, and probably need therapy, just like the majority of us that love these characters probably need therapy. I know I'm guilty of that. But we love these characters, we support them, and we protect them at all costs, even when we know that, you know, you can't really change them. You might think you can, but they can only change themselves. So yeah, let's have a look at part 2 of our tortured emo boys and see who we've got. And we are starting off with a very well-known, very popular one. People might agree that he might not quite fit the criteria, but I'm going with it anyway because he's one of my favourite characters, and that is Kel from A Darker Shades of Magic. If you've read the series, you might be like, but he grew up in a palace and was treated like a prince. How on earth is he a tortured emo boy? Well, let me tell you. He didn't have the best of childhoods. Yes, he grew up in the palace. Didn't mean that he was treated fantastically. He also has a lot of internal angst. He also goes through a lot in this series. And I'm specifically thinking more for, even though I've not yet read, I know, shame on me, Fragile Threads of Power. I do know that he is a lot more sort of tortured in that and goes through a lot more mentally in that. But, you know, this guy goes through a lot and has been through a lot, and throughout the story just gets more and more and more broken. So yeah, he's maybe starts off the series slightly more on the kind of more the emo sort side than the tortured side, but by the end of the series he fits both boxes very comfortably, or uncomfortably if you're Kel. Our next character is Jack from Ace of Shades. It's a world with gangs and not great stuff going on, and one of the characters in this, called Jack, he doesn't become a main character with his own POV until the second book, but we learn enough from him in the first book to know that he absolutely qualifies as a tortured emo boy. He basically grew up on the streets, abusive parents, had to kind of go into illegal boxing matches and gambling and things in order to try and make money, has dabbled in not great substances, and just essentially has broken himself as well as having the world break him. And he struggles with mental health and he struggles with morality quite a lot throughout this series. So he is the #1 reason why I have put off reading the final book for 3 years now, because he broke me in the second book. That's all I'm gonna say. And yes, he absolutely qualifies. As does Hatcher from Alice by Christina Henry. Oh boy, Hatter has always been a bit of a quirky character. He's mad, he's crazy. In this, he's also a psychopathic murderer, which is don't know, just adds a little extra layer to that psychopathy. Yeah, he has been broken down so many different ways by the system. We also get his perspective in, what's the name of it? The Looking Glass, which was a short story collection that had different insights into, like, one story was pre this, a couple were after, and his main story in that definitely showed you just how broken down he was and how hopeless he was made to feel when his wife and child were killed. And you can understand why he went into that murderous rage. But it also means that, yes, he protects Alice, but he doesn't always do it in a level-headed, calm kind of way, and that is very Tortured Emo Boy. They do tend to be quite impulsive and quite reactive and explosive, rather than calm, collected, and thinking things through. So I feel like he definitely does qualify for that. However, some Tortured Emo Boys are calm, they are calculated, they do think things through. They might have the occasional slip, but in general they are very, very held together. And none do that better than Lloyd Forger from Spy Family. This is a manga series that I absolutely love. It's definitely currently working its way up into like my top all-time favourites. Lloyd Forger is a spy, and as an adult he's very cool, very calm, very composed, but when you sort of start to peel back some of his layers a little bit more, you realise that he does struggle to keep his composure, especially once he gets Anya involved and becomes like this kind of father. It does really start to mess with his psyche and starts to make him reevaluate himself as a person, and makes him think back to his origins, where he was a child from a war-torn country, and, you know, you realise that he actually has gone through quite a lot, and that led him to wanting to become a spy to protect future children. And now that he's in this role as a father, you see more of that vulnerability coming through. He's not the most overtly tortured emo boy, and not necessarily someone you would immediately think of, but I do think he does qualify from his background and why he's a spy. I think he qualifies. Next up, we are heading back to my all-time favourite author, and that is Nalini Singh, where we have Aiden from the Guild Hunter series. A fair few of the characters throughout this series can classify, like I would say Jason very much is a tortured emo boy, especially where he's quite sort of introverted and quiet and moody quite a lot of the time in the first few books. But the one that I feel is the absolute epitome of tortured emo boy in this series has to go to Aiden, because he was literally tortured and for 200 years has been suffering from PTSD, and sort of if someone touches him he goes into a meltdown. It's affected everything about him. It's impacted his relationships, his friendships, and yet everyone around him still loves and supports him and stands by him and just wants him back. And watching his story unfold over these books, where it took until this book, which I think is book 11 or 12, it took that long before we finally had him as the main perspective character, but every other book he's at least mentioned once, and we get to see tiny glimpses of him and his healing process. And it has just been such a joy to watch and witness and be a part of for, well, I've been reading this series for 12 years, I started reading the series the year before my mum passed, so 2011. I have now been reading this series for 14 years, and it has just been sheer joy watching him evolve through that time. The next on this list is another manga, and we have Ciel from Black Butler. I also kind of consider Finian, so Finny, who is the gardener, I also consider him because he was literally experimented on, tortured, and went through hell as a child. But he is such a sunny, sunshiny, happy cinnamon roll. He doesn't fit the emo part very well, so he's only halfway there. But Ciel takes tortured emo boy, like, he is the poster for it. He even dresses like a little emo, with wearing all blacks and purples and the hair over his face, and, you know, he just epitomizes tortured emo boy. So he not only went through absolute hell as a child and watched his family be, you know, in front of him, he also went through assault. He also went through selling his soul to a demon in order to get the strength to fight back and come home. He is just so, like, melancholic and so emo-y. When he is made to do something, he's just like, ugh, fine. And it's very, very rare that we see the cracks in his shell that show that he is still a child. So he definitely does fit that emo boy role just so perfectly well, and I love him so much. Not so much a child, but definitely tortured. We have Falkio from the Greatcoat series. He is, I think he's my least favourite character for the fact that he tends to fall into the trap of being a whiny bitch. And he's so, like, his entire personality is the fact that his wife was murdered when he was younger, and that is kind of his, everything about his life is sort of ordained by that. It does come more prevalent into the story further on, and you get a little bit more understanding of why it still affects him to this day, like as strongly as it did the day it happened. But throughout the series, so we start the series with him already very kind of gloom and doom, melancholic, doesn't really have the most positive outlook on life, shall we say. His entire unit has been scattered across the world after their king was killed. They're branded as traitors. You know, his reputation and dignity is in shreds. He doesn't really feel he has a lot to be positive about. But throughout the series, even when things start to happen that he should start to feel a little bit more of a positive outlook on life, other stuff happens that brings him right back down. So not only is he tortured, he sort of starts off as an emo boy, and then the tortured bit kind of comes in through the series, because it's almost laughable at the things that this man goes through and is still alive and still kicking. It's just like, how? How? I mean, obviously because he's the main character of a fantasy series, that's how. But it is quite almost ludicrous the things he's gone through, and he still manages to pick up his blade. It's impressive, it's great, but it's also kind of like, when is this man gonna get a break? So yeah, definitely counts. The next character I'm choosing is Wolf from the Lunar Chronicles series by Marissa Meyer. He is the primary lead alongside Scarlet in book 2, which is called Scarlet. And he is a kind of genetically engineered and modified human werewolf type thing. And yeah, you learn that, you know, being a genetically modified humanoid means you didn't have the best of upbringings. At the start of the series, he's kind of, you know, lone wolf. He's very snarly, he's very keeping at arm's length, but he's also very protective and immediately grows protective of Scarlet. And at the end, in winter, he has a few moments that would just absolutely melt my heart and sign me up for having him as a boyfriend kind of thing. And just, I love his character. I desperately need to reread this series, because every time I start talking about it, I'm like forgetting smaller details, and I just want to go back in and reread them. So I think this year is going to be when I try to get back to this series and reread it. The final manga, and also the final kind of contemporary picks, there's not really many that I found in my contemporary books that have that kind of same category. But we have Orange, but in this one we have Kakeru, who is a high school student who, on the first day starting at this new school, his mother unfortunately takes her own life. He is then racked with guilt, and we learn that from these series of letters that somehow have managed to travel through time, we learn that he ultimately followed suit a few months later, and now his group of friends are trying to save him and stop that from happening, and try and show him that there is things in life worth living for. And, you know, he's got that tortured emo boy because, you know, he had a father that left him very early on. He had a very sickly mother who did what she did. He's got a lot of guilt, a lot of grief, and a lot of hurt going on. And there are scenes in this where he does do the whole pushing people away in order to protect them because, you know, he knows that he doesn't want to be around, so he doesn't want them to be hurt in that process. So he tries to distance himself. And it was a beautifully written story. I did have some issues with it, with how it seemed like the main story was that it's up to other people to help you in those situations, and I didn't like that. But everything else about this and the actual representation of his depression and grief was spot on perfect. And yeah, tortured emo boy, he absolutely is. And he is a gentle and beautiful cinnamon roll under that, which again, for me, classifies as tortured emo. And our final one on this list is one that I think most of you will agree with if you've read the series. The third one hasn't come out yet, and I only recently discovered that it's not going to be a trilogy, it's actually a quadrilogy. And I was like, are you absolutely kidding me? Because, but that is Selwyn Kane from Legendborn. Similarly, in the first video where I started with Kaz Brecker and was like, if you opened up a dictionary and looked up tortured emo boy, his picture would be in it. Well, Selwyn Kane would be the closing statement, as he is in this video, because he is also very messed up, very tortured, gives off that semblance of get the fuck away from me before I melt your face off, when in actual fact he's doing that because he's scared of hurting people, and he's also scared of getting hurt himself. And throughout I'd say towards the end of the first book and then throughout the second book, we get so much insight into his background, and we realise again he has had such a traumatic and dark childhood up until this point. These are like 18, 19-year-old kids. Can't believe I just said that as a kid, even though they are technically adults. But these are, you know, they're at college, they're young, and they've gone through more. Certainly Selwyn has gone through more than most 60, 70-year-olds do. Even in fantasy worlds where everything is doom and gloom, he's gone through more. So, you know, he's gruff, he's got that bad boy image, he's got the dark hair, he gives off the touch her and die vibes. What's not to love about him? I love him so much, and he is by far my favourite character in this series. So there you have it, that is part 2 of my tortured emo boy list. As I said at the start, I do still have some that I could include, so let me know if you would be interested in a part 3, or if you'd like me to do, say, a female equivalent of this. Let me know if you would like me to do a follow-up to this, if you want me to do the exact same characters but females, or if you want me to do something with female characters but maybe a different theme. Just let me know, I'm always interested to hear what you think. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all good, I hope you're staying safe, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!